Welcome to the British Chamber of Commerce Singapore's podcast channel. We're excited to bring you Season 3 of new episodes featuring in-depth content across Singapore, ASEAN and the United Kingdom. We've had some extraordinary guests on our channel, including Formula One's Claire Williams.
I'm a firm believer that any great team, any successful team has a great culture flowing through it. You aren't successful if you don't. So we put a lot of work into this.
Renowned mountaineer Kenton Cool.
There, 2019, there with a client, a big storm came in and literally destroyed Camp 2. And I've got some video footage of Sherpas like trying to hold on to the tent fabric as it blows away. And
the Royal Navy's Commodore Steve Morehouse, commander of the UK Carrier Strike Group.
The squadron of F-35 aircraft we have on board is a Royal Air Force squadron, and the personnel there are drawn from both the Navy and the Air Force. So, what better way of showing just the efficiency and the joined-up nature that we now have.
And distinguished Sky News anchor Jeremy Thompson.
We had two little vans with satellite links, and we leapfrogged up the road to Pristina, the capital, throughout that first day, with non-stop coverage from basically inside a war zone.
We also sit down with the likes of TikTok, Twitch and Twitter and continue to bring you conversations around business and trade, leadership and people, sustainability, sports and arts and much, much more. Thank you, as always, for your support and we hope you enjoy this podcast. Hello and welcome to another edition of In Conversation with me, David Kelly. This is the series that brings you some brilliant high profile and prominent people spanning business and trade through to culture, the arts. And as we run up to the Singapore Grand Prix in a couple of weeks' time, this year we'll see the Lion City host Round 6, which will also be the first race of the W Series here in Singapore, an all-female single-seater racing championship which started in 2019. My guest today, and I'm really excited about this, is not only a British racing driver in the W Series, but is a qualified racing instructor and driving coach and has starred as a test driver for Amazon's The Grand Tour as well. It really is my pleasure to welcome Abbie Eaton. Abbie, thanks so much for joining us today.
That's all right. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's great to have you with us and really excited to have you here in Singapore soon as well. It's going to be great. Are you looking forward to coming over here and racing on the street circuit for the first time?
Yeah, I think it's going to be, a real experience. And actually before the calendar, obviously because it was a last minute addition, and before the calendar was even announced for this year, I was saying to some of the other girls, it would be great if we could race in Singapore in the night race, and kind of everything all was lined up in the correct way. And we're racing at Singapore in, what's it now? 2 weeks, is it? Something like that, 3 weeks?
2 weeks. Is there a lot to prepare for? Is it a very different sort of experience to other circuits around the world with the humidity, for example?
Yeah, it's pretty kind of unique in terms of how brutal the weather's going to be. Obviously, it's very, very hot day and night, and the humidity is extremely high. So, there's going to be a lot of fatigue elements that come into Singapore. So, the preparation for that physically has been training in very hot conditions, when we're on the simulator, making sure that the sim room's also hot and stuff like that. So it's going to be a test for all of us, I think, no matter how fit anyone is. I think, I've been to Singapore before on holiday and just, you forget about it when you're, in the house or in the flat. You've got obviously air conditioning and you completely forget about it until you open the door and then that heat hits you. So yeah, it's going to be an experience, but I think, it's going to be exciting to drive on, a proper street circuit. We had the opening round in Miami, which was kind of a bit of a hybrid of a street and a kind of normal circuit, whereas Singapore is a proper street circuit and it is extremely long. So we've all been doing hours and hours on the simulator learning where it goes.
Oh, super. Have you got a favourite corner?
I like the bit, is it just after the bridge where it goes on the super tight, sketchy bit?
Yeah.
I don't know whether I'll be quite such a fan of it in real life when I'm hurtling towards it, but on the sim, it's great.
Oh, good stuff. So tell us a little bit about you, Abbie. How did you get into motorsport? When did you realise that it was something that you really wanted to do and that you were pretty good at it? Because you've won many races over several categories as well. So when did all that sort of come together?
So I started when I was 10 years old in go-karts, and it was really through my dad. So I grew up watching my dad race all sorts of pieces of kit, bikes, karts, and then into cars. So, I pestered for a few years, and eventually he allowed me to start. And in go-karts, if anyone ever says to me, what's the best way to get into motorsport for my kid, or, what's the best place to learn, I definitely would point them to karting, because, you learn all the foundations of, really racecraft. And, when you learn it so young like that, it really is ingrained in you for the rest of your life. And, I really enjoyed the kind of social aspect of karting when I was that age, but it was probably a kind of a bit of an age where I'm like, well, my friend's birthday party's like going on, so do I have to go karting, or like, can I miss this one and do it the next week? So I didn't really see it as being a career for me at that kind of age. But as soon as I moved into cars, which was I was 15 or 16, 15. As soon as I moved into cars, I was like, wow, this is amazing. Like, this is what I want to do. And I remember it was my first ever experience on a proper big racetrack at Donington Park. And I remember my first session just being like, this is awesome. And then, probably when I started winning championships, that's when I kind of thought, right, actually, I'm quite good at this, and, let's see where it goes.
Oh, it's absolutely amazing. And then the sort of that route to sort of the W Series as well. I mean, it has, I think, a couple of years ago, sort of received a little bit of criticism about sort of segregating sort of men and women from different parts of motorsport. But it must be a really good platform, right, to be able to sort of entice more girls into motorsport.
Yeah, you can't. It's always going to be a kind of divisive championship, and people are going to love it, people are going to hate it, and others are not going to really understand why it exists. But you cannot kind of dismiss the fact that it already gives 20 girls a platform with F1, and that's invaluable. There's a lot of money to be paid to be racing alongside Formula One, and not only that, but racing the F3 cars. My background was never ever single seaters, because I come from a kind of background where my dad had to work hard, mum and dad both had to work hard to be able to fund the racing, and I'd never had a silver spoon in my mouth. So everything was, we didn't have new tires, and it was going out and racing as and when we could. So I never did really full seasons. But with W Series, it kind of the opportunity was too good to not go down the single seater route, and single seaters are super expensive, which is why I stayed with the other stuff. So I've kind of done it really the wrong way around. Really the best option would be starting karting and going to single seaters, and then maybe if you're not going to go the F1 route, then you can go into GTs and stuff like that. So I've done it the wrong way around, but the challenge and the experience and the opportunity was too good for me to say no to. So I am one of the oldest on the grid, but ultimately the opportunity's there, so I'm going to take it.
Super. And just for those that don't know the difference between a single seater and a sports car, for example, how different are they to race? So
if you imagine, the stuff I've predominantly done is kind of GT cars. So that would be cars like Ferraris, Lamborghinis, Bentleys. So the big, heavy cars with, big motors in it, 12 different traction control settings, 12 different ABS settings. Like, there's lots of technology in it that basically is trying to make it, you generally do it a 2-driver thing. So you have an amateur driver, a gentleman driver, and you have a pro driver. So they basically make the cars as kind of easy for the AM driver to kind of get stuck into, so that they're nice and close to the pro driver. Whereas a single seater is kind of really raw. It's one driver only. Generally, it can be sprint races up to the Formula One, however many God knows hours in the car and in the heat. If you were trying to explain it in layman's terms, a single seater is like an F1 car, so you're in there by yourself in the middle, and a GT or sports car is the bigger kind of cars that you see sometimes on the road as well.
And the single seaters, they look quite vulnerable, and you've been involved in some pretty spectacular moments in W Series. There was notably that frighteningly scary accident at Eau Rouge and Raidillon at Spa-Francorchamps, which was just frightening to watch on TV. But also you break your back going over a sausage curb at the Circuit of the Americas, I think, as well, which looked fairly innocuous from the telly, but actually, clearly just shows the danger of the sport. When you go through a moment like that, what goes through your mind sort of mentally when you're in the car and you're strapped in and you're in that on your own? Both crashes were completely different, and I'd like to make a point that I don't crash often. Like I said before last year,
I think the last crash I had was 2014. So I'm just racking them all up in the 1 year. But the two crashes were really polar opposites of, if you visually viewed them, you'd think the Spa crash was absolutely huge. You'd think, God, someone's really injured in that. And the one that I had at Kota, it wasn't even a crash. I just ran over a curb, and you would think, oh, that's probably a bit sore, but that's it. And in the Spa crash, there was 6 cars involved, and we all walked out of it. Whereas in the Kota crash, it wasn't quite the same. But in the Spa crash, because things, it goes slow motion when you're in something like that. Because all your senses are kind of heightened, and you are analysing everything. So, with the Spa crash, I saw Sarah lose the rear of her car first in front of me and start to spin. And, I thought maybe she's lifted in the middle of the corner and the tyres are not quite up to temperature, because you couldn't actually see any rain on the track, and there was no rain signs that they sometimes put up if it's rained, because Spa is such a long circuit. You can be on the other side and it's chucked it down and you don't realise. So I saw her spin and I thought, right, okay, I've really got to keep this like flat, full power, because I think that's why she's maybe spun. And as soon as I turned in, I went round, and then 4 other people behind me did as well, and we all ended up going into each other. But you kind of go in. I went in backwards, and then I just got a glimpse of everyone else coming, and then that's when it goes into slow motion. So you just kind of sit and wait, and obviously there was a car and another car and another car, so it just seemed to go on forever. And you don't really think that much. You just wait. You just sit in the cockpit, and you think, right, okay, make yourself nice and small, and just hope that none of the hits hurt. So if you compare that with the Kota incident, there was, again, it kind of went slow motion, but it was such a short incident. It lasted probably 5 seconds, if that. But again, I kind of knew that I'd broken my back. I heard it crunch, and the pain was instant. So I knew I'd broken my back, or that's what I thought I'd done. And again, it's kind of a bit like, as soon as I landed, I had to dodge a Rolex advertising sign anyway, which I didn't think. I just did it. So I thought, okay, well, at least I can move my arms, and I can move my legs, and then that was it. Then you go on to the next step, which is, right, how do I tell everyone that I'm injured? How do I get out? And you move on like that. So you break it down quite methodically as to the situation you're in, analysing what's going on, and then thinking, right, okay, how do I get to the next step? And you just do it like that. So you don't really have any time for fear. You haven't. You just think, well, I'm here now, so hopefully none of them hurt. Or I think I broke my back. So right, let's see what happens next.
Do you say that over the radio? I mean, you'll know your own body, right? And you know when something really hurts, or is it okay? Are you still sort of high on the adrenaline from racing around a track at such speed, and your body's obviously kicking in when you go through something like that? What do you communicate back to the team when you're sort of sat in the car and you realise something's not right?
I knew straight away. So before I'd even stopped rolling, I was on the radio, and I remember saying to my engineer, I said, and I couldn't really get my words out, and I was like, I've really, really hurt my back. I've broken my back, and the radios aren't particularly great. So he's like, what are you saying? And I was like, I've broken my back. I've hurt my back. Like, get help. And unfortunately at that race, there was a miscommunication between the circuit staff. So, my engineer heard what I said, and he was like, okay, just stay still. We'll get help to you. And, I think all the W Series guys were running up and down the pit lane trying to tell people, like, she needs help. And, unfortunately, the circuit staff or the rescue staff didn't get told that. They just thought I'd broken down. So they were all wondering, why is she not getting out of the car? And they weren't in a particular rush to come and get to me. And then when they did, they were pushing the car, and they were saying to me, like, steer the wheel because we're going to push you back into the hole. And I'm like, I've broken my back. Like, I don't want to move. And, they couldn't quite hear what was going on. And in the end, I moved the wheel and stopped, and then they bent down and said, why aren't you getting out the car? And then I explained, and then it was all into quick action, and they were great from there. But they've learned a lot from that incident, so that's good, at least, that if something similar was to happen again, those kind of situations would be a little bit more efficient, and hopefully nothing like that happens again. But at least they are a little bit more prepared than they were before.
Oh, it's great. It's great that you're back racing as well, and you made sort of a really, really good recovery. And just through that recovery, how do you mentally? Because presumably there was a lot of lying down, a lot of seeing other things happen around your life as well. Obviously, you've got a massive love for cars and motorsport as well. So, what was it like sort of going through that recovery stage, and how did you get back into the fact that you wanted to get back into a car and you wanted to race quickly, and what was that journey like?
It was a bit up and down, really. You know, to start off with, I was like, I'm not racing again. Like in my head, I was like, and I said to my manager, I was like, I'm not interested. I don't want to do it anymore. Like it's, you know, I'm 30. Like, what am I doing? You know, this isn't really the kind of racing that I want to do anyway. You know, it's not. I'm not really enjoying it. But that was more, I think, probably a bit of a knee-jerk reaction because, you know, I'd just gone through something quite painful. And then as the kind of days went past and, you know, you kind of go through these little hurdles, whether it's a bad one or, you know, a good one and stuff like that. And, you know, I think that the part where, so on the following day, actually, another kid, 15-year-old kid, actually broke his back in the same way, going over the same curb. So they actually ended up removing those curbs. But so I was kind of on this journey with him. So, you know, I was speaking to his mum and stuff like that. And, you know, it kind of, his break, I don't think was quite as severe. And so he was in America and basically they gave him like a back brace. So it was kind of stopped just kind of middle of his chest. It went down to his lower back. And I had this one on there. It was a back plate, but it also had a neck collar on it as well. So I was in this torture device. And I remember him saying, "Oh, like they've just given me," because he was originally in that one with the neck brace, and then they gave him the back brace only. And I was thinking, "Oh my God, please, like let me just have the back brace." Like when I had to speak to my consultant, and so I was waiting for the call to come through, and he was like, "I'm sorry, you're going to have to keep that one on, and we're going to get you a more brutal one made, basically." And I was like, "Oh, you know, you're torturing me here, mate." Like, you know, I was really holding on to that for like 3 weeks, thinking I'm going to get out of this. And I remember I put the phone down and I was at mum and dad's house, you know, they were looking after me. And I remember just laying on the sofa and I just burst out into tears. And I was like, how am I going to cope with this horrible thing on for like 4 months? And, you know, had a little cry that night, didn't really sleep a lot. And then when I woke up the next morning, it was like, right, okay, this is the situation. So deal with it, you know, get over it. Nothing's going to change. You know, you're not paralyzed, you're not injured in that regard. So you owe it to other people that actually are, you know, worse off. So, you know, pull your big girl pants up and deal with it. And, you know, that's kind of where I went from there. And, you know, I think it's important to have those moments where you have sad moments, you deal with it, you know, you look at yourself, you use those to build strength, and then you move on to the next stuff. And, you know, as the weeks went on, I thought, actually, do you know what? Like, I've got a really good goal at the end of this to get back in a race car. So I'm going to do it, you know. And it was a big ask to be able to be fit by the time W Series season started, which was perfect because I love a challenge. So actually I used that and realised, you know what, actually this is what I want, and I'm going to get my teeth stuck into it because I want to come back and I want to do better this next year than I did the previous year. And that again is a tall ask because I've got a season of being completely deconditioned in strength and you know, fitness, but I'm going to do it. And, you know, I did it, and not just myself, you know, the help of all my physio, my trainers, my family, you know, my other half, everyone, and just put mind to it and was able to do it. So actually, you know, if I genuinely think if I'd have in my head been like, you know what, yeah, I'm definitely not interested in racing anymore, then actually my recovery would have been much longer.
It sounds like you've been through a hell of a journey. Thank you for being so honest about that as well. Let's move on to something a bit more positive than you crashing cars.
Yeah, well, I'm not going to do that in Singapore.
Exactly. Yeah. So I mean, it's really exciting that the W Series are coming here. Really, really exciting. How difficult is it for girls to get into motorsport? Is it challenging? Or does the W Series now provide a really good, credible, and a new route to try and bring some more girls into the sport?
I don't think it's necessarily harder for girls to get into the sport. I think it's, you know, if you want to get into the sport, there's opportunities there no matter who you are. But I think it's getting the opportunities once you're in it. I think that's the part that's maybe a little bit more difficult. And I think it comes down to a numbers game, that there are so many more men in motorsport, and the ones that are kind of half talented, if they've got a lot of money behind them and some connections, generally they'll make it. So if you say there's 1,000 lads that, out of those 1,000 guys, there's maybe 10 of them that are good enough, and maybe only 5 of them have got multi-million-pound family, they're the ones that are going to make it. So then if you compare that with girls, you might only have 20 girls, and then it means that there's only like 2 girls that actually have got what they need to succeed. And we're seeing it at the moment that the 1 or 2 that are actually doing well and flying the flag and being successful have been the ones that have got talent, but they've also got funding behind them as well. So I've been in motorsport now for 20 years, and I've ticked along, and I've made my own kind of opportunities and created that kind of name for myself, I guess. And it takes a lot of hard work, and nowadays everything happens so quick. People, girls, boys are in F3 cars when they're like 16, so they need that kind of acceleration quicker and earlier, and they need the best people around them. And that's actually what W Series is doing, is that it's creating 18 to 20 drivers straight away to have a go in an F3 car. And not only that, but to drive an F3 car at F1 meetings, in the F1 paddocks, going to F1 circuits. And you have the support of an engineer every race that will go through your data. You've got driver coaches, you've got physios. So there is a lot of kind of infrastructure around you that I've never ever had until I went into a professional race team, which was, I think the first time I did that was 2017. So these girls, Juju, for example, what is she, like 16? Like, she's got this straight away, and it's just a great opportunity, because if people are getting these opportunities earlier, they'll hopefully peak a bit earlier or quicker to where they need to be, the level they need to be, and then they can flourish into whatever driver they want to be. So as much as I mentioned earlier, people maybe badmouth W Series in terms of the segregation, which yes, it is a sticking point still, but it's really the only viable way to do what W Series can do to make a positive impact. And we're seeing that already, channeling down to grassroots. There are a lot more females coming into karting, and a lot more females into single seaters in the UK. So it's happening already, and we've only been going since 2019.
Really, really impressive. Really impressive, and great to see that as well. Do you think is the money behind it? I mean, you talked about having sort of money and connections, and the series has done an amazing job over the last couple of years, and it's really good racing as well. I mean, it's great that it's sort of televised, it's great profile. Are you starting to see sort of the sponsors and the money start to come through with that, as well as sort of the audience grows?
It's definitely getting better. I think probably in the early years, people were a bit worried as to, is this going to be a bit of a flop or a bit of a gimmick, which there've been previous kind of championships that have been female, academy type stuff that have been female only, and they've not really worked. So, I can understand people's reservations to start off with, but, as you say, we're getting bigger, we're on Sky Sports with everything, and actually, Silverstone, for example, this year was the highest viewed motorsport event since 2014 outside of F1. So that says it all. We've got so much support for the the girls as drivers, and also the championship. So really, I would hope to see more investment than what we're getting. And I don't really understand why we're still struggling a little bit in terms of trying to get these big names in. We've got some awesome loyal kind of sponsors coming in, and some new ones, hopefully as well. But, women's football, for example, at the moment is exploded. It's gone huge. And that will hopefully have a positive effect on W Series as well, and just attract some more sponsors. But, the fact we're going to these, to visit you guys in Singapore, and we're going to Mexico and other places like that, hopefully some sponsors and companies and businesses out there will want to get involved as well. And, I think W Series on the race weekend has such a really, really nice atmosphere that, you need to come down and see it and see what we're all about. So
you're coming to Singapore. Have you got a favourite circuit, Abbie?
I've got many a favourite circuit. I can't pick. I think probably the the best one recently, or the one that I've enjoyed the most, was Zandvoort in Holland. So I drove that last year for the first time, and yeah, really enjoyed that. But you know, my kind of circuit that has my heart is Oulton Park in the UK.
It's fast in the north.
In the north, yeah, it's narrow, it's ups and downs through the trees. It's awesome. But yeah, Zandvoort was also a great experience, which is it's kind of similar. You know, it's definitely completely different to, you know, some of the F1 circuits like, you know, Paul Ricard and Barcelona, which is all kind of quite open and flat. You know, those circuits are quite narrow, and they're not very forgiving if it goes wrong. So hopefully, you know, given that Singapore is very non-forgiving if it goes wrong. So hopefully I'll enjoy that and do well there as well.
Oh, brilliant. And if we can give you a crystal ball, what does your career look like going forwards? What have you sort of got on the horizon in terms of your future career in motorsport? I mean, you mentioned that you were one of the oldest on the grid. Have you got a bit of a plan in the future of what you're looking to do?
I've got thoughts of the future now. You know, I'd love to try and kind of mentor some of the younger drivers. You know, I think you end up banging your head against the wall, you know, listening to some of the stuff they come out with, and you just, you know, I've been there, I've done it, and you know, I can see how other people perceive, you know, maybe poor attitudes and stuff like that as well. So, you know, I'd love to try and kind of help them on their journey, which I'm already, you know, helping a few younger drivers, which is great. And I'd love to get back into, you know, the racing that I've always done, you know, GT racing, maybe some touring car stuff. You know, I'd love to get back across into that. You know, ultimately F3, I'm definitely too old to be racing F3. But as I mentioned before, the opportunity is way too good to not do. And, you know, it's not just myself, there's a few others a similar age to me. And, you know, to be quite honest, the younger drivers that need to come and fill our shoes, you know, they're not good enough yet. So, you know, we're a bit of a fail-safe in that regard, and we produce some great racing as well. So, you know, the younger generation are coming through, and we're seeing that year by year that, you know, they're getting more and more competitive. And, you know, look at the newbies from this year. You know, the first round, it wasn't particularly great, but, you know, each race they've done, they've got more confident and more consistent and quicker as well. So, yeah, we'll see what happens. We'll see what's to come, and yeah, hopefully a few more years of racing yet.
Well, what about Le Mans? Is that something on your radar? Is that something you'd love to do?
I would never ever say no to Le Mans. Yeah, definitely. The opportunity for that would I'd bite someone's hand off for it. But yeah, I think I need to do a little bit more kind of GT racing again back in Europe and in the UK before I do that. But unfortunately, that costs a lot of money. So you know, I'm working quite hard at the moment alongside with W Series. You know, competing in W Series, just trying to get proposals and kind of business plans and stuff out to companies and businesses to try and, you know, do something alongside W Series as well. So yeah, I'm working away at it, and hopefully something will come together next year.
Oh, super. And when you're not on the circuit, when you're not racing with your team, when you're not training, you're a driving coach as well, and you've had some TV bits as well through the Grand Tour. How was that? Did you really enjoy that? Yeah,
it was a great experience, and it was, you know, great to just have it on your CV, I suppose. You know, I grew up watching Jeremy and James and Richard on the telly every Sunday when I was growing up. So, you know, to work with them was something quite special. You know, they were kind of, I suppose, a national treasure from that regard. You know, how many Britons turn them on and watch them on the telly, and, you know, there's me driving a car with them. So, you know, really cool experience, and got to drive lots of amazing cars that, you know, I would never get the opportunity to, you know, without them as well. And ultimately that kind of, you know, increased my profile and gave me a little bit of a boost. And, you know, I've got a lot of opportunities from that afterwards as well. So, yeah, great fun. Can't really call it a job, you know, playing with cars and, you know, doing skids for the telly. But yeah, I enjoyed it. I'd love to do it every day.
Yeah, I think I'm certainly very envious of you, Abbie. I really am. I'd absolutely love to do it. Is Captain Slow really that slow?
No, he's good. He's a good driver. All three of them are very, very good drivers. Yeah, he gets fun poked at him a lot, but he's great. He's great as James. He's very, very witty, very funny guy. Oh, super.
I mean, it's been amazing to hear about your career, the W Series, sort of how you got out of situations which have been sort of less good over the last couple of years as well. The future. And the opportunity, really good. There's a question that we ask everyone, Abbie, on our channel, which is, if I could throw you the British Chamber of Commerce time machine and you can go back to any point of your life that you've led where you could give yourself some advice of something that you know now that you tell a younger self, what advice would you give yourself, and when would that be?
I would go back to probably when I just moved into cars, or maybe just before, so I was towards the end of karting, and I would tell myself how to train properly and how to prepare my body properly, because with the racing that I did to start off with, so my first car was the Citroen Saxo, and then it was a touring car, a Corsa VXR and stuff like that. Like, they've all got power steering, they've all got power assisted braking, all that kind of stuff. And so I trained, but I didn't really need to train that much because it wasn't very physical to drive. And so, I've done it the wrong way around. Single seaters are super, super physical. But actually, because I've raced and jumped in and out of random cars, where the seat position might not be 100% to you, but you kind of, adjust your body to get round it. And it ends up ruining your body. So I would say, go back to myself as younger and say, if there's any car that you're ever not 100% comfortable in, don't compromise yourself to fit the car. Like, try and make it as comfortable as possible, because it will be a detriment to your body in the future. And train, your neck and all that kind of stuff as early as you can, because, for example, your neck takes forever to get strong and forever to build muscle. So the earlier you can do it, the stronger you're going to be, in later years. And I would just say, take care of your body a little bit more when you're younger, and then it'll reward you when you're a little bit older.
Oh, what great advice. Look, thank you so much for your time today. It's been great to see you. We're really looking forward to welcoming you to Singapore as well. And I know that we'll all be rooting for you. It's been great to hear about your journey, hear about you, hear about the series. It's a great platform. And if there's anything the Chamber of Commerce can do, please do reach out. It's been brilliant to have you with us. Thanks so much.
No worries. I'll see you at Singapore. See you in the paddock.
Done. See you soon.
Yeah, cheers. Thanks a lot.
Thank you for tuning into this episode of the British Chambers podcast. Before you go, don't forget to subscribe, and why not leave us a rating and review on Spotify, Apple, Google, and the other podcast platforms. For more information, please visit our website at www.britcham.org.sg and tune in next time for a brand new episode.